there, so today I bring you the second part of my April wrap up. I'm just going to get straight into it because even though I split this in two, I've still got quite a lot to talk about, so let's go. Firstly, I haven't got it here yet. I will put a picture somewhere about. Sophia Khan's Not Obliged by Aisha Malik. I did a full review of this, which I will link down below, so I won't say too much, apart from to say I didn't like it. The more time goes by, I like it even less. In my video, my individual review, I said I would still recommend it. I don't know if I now stick with that. I think the more I think about it, the more it irritates me. Basically, it is a Bridget Jones-esque retelling, but done from the point of view of a 30-year-old Muslim woman living in London who is writing a dating book about Muslim dating, and it just has... there are issues, there are real issues. As I say, I won't go into it now. If you want to know more, please check out my review, which I will link down below. Then I got Symmetries by Jeanette Winterson. Other than Oranges Is Not the Only Fruit, and I've also read The World in Other Places, one of her short story collections, and Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, which I read earlier in the month. This was my first proper Jeanette Winterson long piece of fiction. I mean, all her books are fairly short, but you know what I mean. It's, other than her short story collection, it's the first really fictionalised thing I've read, because Oranges is quite memoir-esque, even though she says it's not. It is very much based on her life. This was fantastic, but I feel like I'm probably not going to be very concise in why it was fantastic. I feel like it's one of those things, it's a really intelligent book in a way that I probably missed a lot, but the writing was just phenomenal, and it was a definite 5-star read for me. I tried looking up for reviews on this, and not much has actually been spoken about it. I think it was one of her very early books, and people just don't seem to review this one very much. I have to say I hadn't heard anything about it. The only reason I picked this one up over others is because it was a signed copy. And basically, I don't even know how I can concisely talk about this with you. It's a love triangle with a twist, basically. I can't even remember what people are called. Alice, a young physicist, begins an affair with Jove, and he has a wife called Stella. Now, Alice and Jove sort of get it on, you know, and then Stella finds out about the affair and confronts Alice, and they end up getting into an affair of their own, and they love each other more. Alice sort of doesn't want to know Jove after that. She's all about Stella. And then it ultimately goes to being about Stella and Jove, and sort of they end up in a situation, and it all gets very bizarre. It's really hard to talk about, but that's the gist of it. And we follow sort of, it switches through time and place, and the perspectives change, so we get perspectives from Alice and Stella, and we go back to their childhoods, and it also seems to focus a lot on the deaths of their fathers, both of them, and it's just fantastic. It talks a lot about physicists and scientists, and there's Einstein's quotes in there and things like this, and it's just fantastic. And it's very much about sort of human nature and love and just all the good stuff, Now I'm going to read you two parts from this because I just had to. I knew I wouldn't be able to describe it very well because it's quite an out there novel, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. So this is after Stella has found out about the affair. I must proceed reasonably. Where is the screwdriver? I will have every hinge off every door. There will be no privacy in the bathroom. No place to read a billet do with one hand. Let him shave in front of me, shit in front of me, talcum powder his armpits under my stare. I will count the hairs on his razor and the rings around his tub. I will fact find him as though he was a rare breed of insect. I will do all this sanely. Give me a drill. I will bore holes in his shoes and spy on him as he walks. Eyes beneath the pavement will be watching him. While he sleeps, I will trepan the back of his head and with fingers pull out his dreams of her. I shall, of course, be quiet. I loved that. And then there's another bit I've got here. Don't lie. You know you like to view, but not to buy. I have found that I am not a space where people want to live, at least not without decorating first, and that is the stubbornness in me. I do not want to be someone's neat little home. I looked round at the wrecked flat, not answering Stella. Then I said, I'm not in love with you. Need I say more? I'm definitely going to read more Jeanette Winterson. I think she's phenomenal. Then, these are my series 24-hour readathon reads. I've sort of spoken about what they were, but I haven't gone into depth, so I shall do that now. Firstly, I read the BFG. This is fantastic. I had so much fun, and I'm so glad I started with this one. This is about a big friendly giant. Sophie, in the witching hour, is awake, and she sees a big shadowy giant from across the street, and he bounds over and snatches her. She thinks he's going to eat her, but it turns out he is the runt giant, and he is a friendly vegetarian giant who lives off of snozzlecumbers. But he has taken her to Giant World because obviously she's seen him, so he can't let her just go. And she can't go outside his little cave because there are big giants out there that would eat her. And she then decides that her and the BFG have to go on a mission to stop the other giants from eating all the children. And it's fantastic. There was so much in here for adults, and I loved it. And I loved the way the BFG spoke. That was my favourite thing. He sort of had a very special way of speaking. He was so much fun. And he got his words all wrong, but it was really sweet, and I loved him. One thing I did think, in the back of this, it's got a little page about Roald Dahl, and it says that he wrote this for his children, and he told it to them when they were going to sleep. But then he would do stuff like wobble the curtains when they were sleeping to make them think there were giants behind them. That's cruel, Roald Dahl. That is really cruel. I read Journey to the East by Hermann Hesse. I didn't like this. I gave it 3 stars, and since then I've thought that actually I probably could have given it 2. This was a reread for me, and I couldn't really remember much about it before. This was kind of big in the hippie community. But I don't think I get on with Hermann Hesse. I've read this and Narcissus and Goldmund, I think it's called, and I didn't like that either, so we'll see. This is basically a non-book for me. It's about a man who in the past was hired to this secret journey society that were all journeying to the East. They couldn't talk about the society and they couldn't say what happened on the journey. They sort of signed a contract, but he wants to write a book about it. And he thinks that the community has broken up anyway, so why not? But it's about the fact that he never writes that book, and the community, of course, hasn't broken up, and they end up being not very happy with him because he was trying to tell their story, and he sort of ends up going in front of the council when they're deciding whether he can rejoin and whatever. But it's just about the book that never was, and it's not fantastic at all. Then I read a series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. This is number 1, The Bad Beginning. I think my reading of this was very much hindered by the fact that I had read the BFG and loved it. Obviously the BFG is written for a younger audience, so there is stuff in there for adults as well, but this I think is written for an audience where they're starting to be able to read for themselves. It's very much middle grade, and so the stuff for adults wasn't in there, and I didn't love this. It didn't blow me away. I will carry on with the series because I've got the box set, but it was nothing special, basically. I found it quite unbelievable and silly. It's about these 3 children whose parents have died, and they have ended up going to their evil uncle's house, and he sort of makes them cook the dinner and do all the chores and things, and he's not very nice, and he blatantly just wants the money that they are going to inherit when they get 18. And he concocts a plan to do with marriage, and I'm sure somebody would have interrupted. I mean, at one point he strikes the young boy and gives him a bruised eye, and they go to the banker who was their parents' friends and who sort of has control of their estate, basically, and they tell him that they have been hit by their uncle, and he's just sort of like, well, he's your dad now, so there's not much I can do. I don't think that would have been the case. Otherwise, people in here are just not very nice, but it was just all a bit far-fetched for my liking. Then I read The Library of Unrequited Love by Sophie Debris. This is translated from French, and it was sweet, and it's only a really short little read about a library, so if you like books, it's worth a read. I didn't love this. I didn't think I would, because I've heard that it's not fantastic. The problem, I think, mainly is that it's in second person. Second person is very, very difficult to get away with. I think it works in a short story, but anything longer than that, it just becomes a monologue, because you're very much only hearing from the point of view of that one person, and she sort of almost has to fill in the gaps. The only other long piece I've read like it is The Reluctant Fundamentalist, and I had exactly the same problems with it, because it's just too one-sided, and you need the outside perspectives as well. And it almost got clumsy, because obviously when the other person speaks, she said, "What was that you said? You said this, and that doesn't work, obviously. But it's still worth a read. It's quite sweet. It's basically just her observations about the library, the people that go in there, and she's in love with one man that goes in there regularly, and she's sort of trying to impress him, and she just tells the man all about that, really. But it's okay. It's worth a read, as I say, if you like books in libraries. Then I read A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I absolutely loved this. I could speak about this for hours. This is based on a talk that Virginia Woolf gave at a college, I think. Yes, at a college in 1928, and she sort of reflects on women in fiction throughout history, and it's fascinating. And she's sort of looking back at the Bronte sisters and Jane Austen, and also the fact that women weren't really expected to have an education, and if a woman was caught reading a book, it was just folly and she was wasting time and daydreaming, whereas if a man was reading a book, he was educating herself. And there's a very interesting part in here where she talks about Shakespeare, and if Shakespeare had a sister who was also as talented as he was, the struggles that she would have faced, and the fact that she just wouldn't have had the opportunities that Shakespeare had, which is really fantastic. And it doesn't just focus on women even, it also focuses on privilege, and the fact that, you know, with the poets, she talks about the famous male poets of the time, all of them were rich and privileged men, apart from John Keats was the only one she could think not of, and he didn't really have the time or space to write. He was living very much in poverty, and he ended up dying very young because of it. And it's just looking at sort of the situations that make writing and creativity quite hard. And what I found really interesting about this was that she sort of looks back on those times and says, look at, you know, that's 100 years ago, and now look, things haven't changed that much. Even though there have been improvements, things are still kind of the same. And reading it now, obviously, it's quite interesting because we've moved a long way from then, but there's still the same issues, and it's really, really fascinating, and I would highly, highly recommend. Then the last sort of novel I read in the read-along was Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. This was my first fiction from Ernest Hemingway. I have previously read The Movable Feast by him. There was problems with this. I enjoyed it, the writing was solid. However, the reasons that I've avoided Ernest Hemingway were in this a bit. I know that he had quite strange morals when it came to animals, like we were a bit against each other, really. He liked bullfighting and things like that, which I think he does often put in his novels. I really don't agree with bullfighting, and I don't want to read about that. This is not about bullfighting. It's about an old man who, he hasn't got fish for ages, but he's a fisherman, and he goes out to sea and ends up hooking a really big fish, but instead of panicking and going through the usual trials, it just carries on swimming, and that's completely normal, and it sort of becomes a test of wills. What I did like in this is that after a few days, because he's with this fish for days, just going round and round, neither of them eating, neither of them sleeping, and he gets a very brotherly connection with the fish, and there is a real respect there, which I really liked. But the thing I found difficult was about the description of the deaths of other animals. There's a lot of wet shark deaths in this, which are just unpleasant, and I don't like that kind of thing. So it was problematic, and it was sometimes uncomfortable for me to read. However, the writing was good, and I still think I will read more Ernest Hemingway. Then I read Fade Out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. This was what I finished on, and it's a graphic novel which I got off of Victoria from Herbert's Progress when she did a giveaway. So again, thank you very much, Victoria. This is a sort of graphic noir, like a sort of old detective movie. It's very much set in Hollywood, and the colours are all quite dark. The artwork generally is quite standard, obviously all in the noir style, but all quite standard. However, there were some stunning pictures towards the end. I don't know if it shows very well, they're sort of memories, so they're really blurred and affected. I just thought they were really pretty, but it was good. It seems to be, I should have noticed because it says Act 1, but it's a sort of series, and nothing was concluded in this. It starts with a death, which is covered up because this is Hollywood and that's what they do. And our main character, he knows that it was covered up because he saw her body first, but he can't remember what happened. I was a bit disappointed that it just ended all of a sudden, like there was no wrap up at all. I think even in a series maybe you should still have some sort of conclusion. That said, it was enjoyable. I don't know if I'll carry on just because I don't think graphic novel series are for me, but I enjoyed the experience and it was nice to end on a graphic novel. Then I finished the audiobook for Living Danishly by, I can't remember because I haven't got the audiobook in front of me. I'll put the picture somewhere anyway, so it'll say somewhere around here. I enjoyed this. It took me quite a while to get through. I sort of, because I was listening to it quite a lot when I was walking to and from work, but then when I gave up work, I sort of stopped listening to it for quite a while and just listened to it in between bits because I just wanted to get through it, which I think affected my listening, but I still gave it 4 stars. A lot of people have been talking about this recently, thanks to Lauren at Lauren and the Books. It's good. It's enjoyable. It's basically just about living Danishly. The narrator and her husband works for Lego, so they have moved to live in Denmark for a year, and it's just about all the sort of trials and tribulations. What I liked about this and what surprised me and what other people seem to say that it made them really want to live in Denmark and they were completely sold. For me, it wasn't. I was expecting it to be completely selling me on Denmark, but it wasn't necessarily. It very much spoke about the trials and tribulations of moving to a new place where you don't know the community, you don't know the rituals, and sort of the confusion of that to start with. And because our narrator is a journalist, she sort of goes about finding out things. So every chapter it will start with something and then it will go into the details of the system there, like when she gets pregnant, it goes into the system of the childcare and also the health system. We talk about the education there, the careers, the holidays and things like this, and it was good fun. But I have to say I wasn't sold on Denmark. I was surprised by how much I didn't like the ideas of it. The one thing that did sell me was the education. Up until they're like into their late 20s, they get paid to go and be educated. I mean, let alone the fact that we have to pay a lot of money. No, they go and they get paid for it, right? But other than that, they are quite strange with their treatment of animals. They're very open about killing animals and they don't really have any qualms about that. You know, you can go and see animals being slaughtered and that's standard. Kids go and see it. It's kind of a fun day out. Also, the treatment of women is quite problematic in many ways. But there were good points and bad points. I have to say I wouldn't particularly like to go and live in Denmark now after reading it, but you know, everyone else seems to take something different from it. So it was good, it was enjoyable. I would definitely say it's worth reading on audio because it's just a nice fun little read and it's quite quaint and quirky and worth a go. Then I read Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I'm not going to go into this because I've been going on for ages and I've done a full review which I will link down below. I really enjoyed this. It was my first sort of long Charles Dickens, and I'm definitely going to be reading more. I think he's fantastic. His observations are fantastic. His human sympathy is fantastic, and I just think he's very, very good. So I will definitely be reading more Charles Dickens, and as I say, if you want to know more, link down below. So that's everything I read for the month. It was a really successful reading month. I'm a bit read out now. I'm kind of taking it easy on myself at the moment because I read a lot last month. But anyway, bye.